For those of you the first time here, we really want to welcome you to the first BeautyTech Summit at CES. We're really excited to have you here and really excited to have these great speakers here. The developments in high-tech innovation for skin, body, overall health is just mind-blowing this year, so we're really excited to bring it. I want to introduce you to our next moderator, Jenna Blaha, who is the tech editor for Marie Claire, who is our, and I keep pronouncing it wrong, I know, but I keep going Marie and someone corrects me. They are our exclusive media partner this year, so we're thrilled to have them. Welcome.
All right, thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to be talking about beauty and brains and sort of the balance between science and aesthetics and form and function. This is the third panel for today, and we have another rock star lineup. I'm so excited. Antonius from Foreo, thank you so much for being here. James from Origin, thank you so much. And Dan from Jenu. Very different products that are approaching the industry in different ways, and I can't wait to talk to each of you. If you guys have been here, you know that I like to start by hearing from each of you first. If we could just go down the line, hear about yourself, what it is that you do, the brand you represent, and we'll go from there. Kick it off.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Antonius. I'm the VP of Business Development for Foreo. We are a Swedish startup. We just turned 3 yesterday. We launched
Happy
at CES 3 years ago. And we do skincare, oral care. So basically what we combine it as is beauty devices. So we've launched 3 years ago the Luna, our facial brushes. We then launched 2 years ago the Isa, our toothbrushes. And then this year we're launching the Luna 2, Luna Mini 2, the Iris, a whole area of new products and ranges.
And they're down here?
They're down here and they're on the booth on the left. We'll go into it later, but they're eye-catching, so you'll see them somewhere in the corner. But so basically, we're a Swedish beauty innovation company, and I head up the North American business development.
My name is Jim Lovgren. I'm with Origin. As I was mentioning to Dan before the panel, I think our company is a little bit unique. We're actually a regenerative medicine company that's trying to improve our understanding of rare and inherited genetic diseases. And what's actually been fueling that has been our interaction with the average consumer who donates a teaspoon of blood towards our research. And what we ended up finding during the course of various events collecting these blood samples was that consumers were asking us questions of, well, your technology seems really advanced. Is there anything you can tell me about myself right now? And we kind of went down this exercise of developing a series of genetic tests that we call life profiles. One test is one we call Fit Code around fitness-related genes. And the one that we're talking about today is one around skin health that we call Aura. So we're not the typical beauty company, but we kind of came across it really by interacting with consumers that were interested in advancing medical research as a whole.
Hey, I'm Dan Obegi. So I'm the CEO of Jenu, and formerly our management team and I used to run the largest skincare e-commerce business in the country. So we had 5 years of experience seeing what people were buying, what they liked, what they didn't like, what's being innovated in the skincare community, and we noticed that the storylines that were making the most headway and the sales, the products that were selling best, were the high-tech products, and it's really based on, I think, efficacy. Everybody wants better, faster results, and some of the energy-based products are able to perform better than the topicals. So we sold that business and started looking at different opportunities and realized that there's a ton of innovation in topical skincare in terms of what's in the jar. So the chemistry has become very advanced. Some of the big holding companies have hundreds of millions of dollars of R&D budgets a year based just on optimizing what's in the jar. But the newest storylines are more about absorption. So even the chemistry, they're talking about these great new ingredients, but how they've micronized them or they've microencapsulated them so that they can increase absorption. So we realized, if you're only absorbing 1 to 10% of these products, we could either try and create a line that was, had higher absorption rate and everybody would have to replace their entire skincare line, or we could create a technology that would increase the absorption of anything. So we ended up finding this technology, we acquired it, and launched the business a year ago.
Thank you so much for sharing. And Dan, while you're hot on the spot, I'm going to ask you, difficult question that I'm hoping you can break down for us so that we can understand where we are today. What is the current state of beauty when it comes to science and technology?
The science of the chemistry of what's in the jar is actually pretty advanced. So some of the best-selling products right now are based on a science that won the Nobel Prize this year. I think it's a Lancome product that has very, very advanced science, very efficacious. So the topical industry is very advanced. The energy-based products, the tools and devices, it's fairly advanced. I mean, it started 100 years ago. The at-home hairdryer was released to the public, and over the years, there's been more and more of these products. But I think the pace of innovation has just massively increased to the point where, I think even next year you'll see a lot more products with a wider variety of different features and benefits using different, up and coming kind of technologies. My guess is this will be a 5 times bigger room next year.
We are breaking ground here, so I'm so excited. And I think that the best example of sort of like where we are now as science too is thinking about DNA and how it's tied. So I'd love to hear from your perspective about where we are in terms of science, DNA, and beauty, and where we're going to take it.
Yeah, I think there's two interesting things. One is when you think about genomics and personalized medicine, typically it's always framed in the context of something you go to your doctor, something that is at a university, at some high-tech institution where you don't even know really what it is. I think the great thing is that now the average consumer, someone here at CES, can learn about genomics and genetics and have it be, frankly, part of the whole quantified self. Everyone here is interested in about their Fitbit, tracking their information, being able to have more data to be able to make better decisions about themselves. And genomics, which used to be out of reach for people, now you have an opportunity where they can actually just purchase a test, do a cheek swab, get a report back, and understand their whole genetic profile, get a report that gives them something actionable that they can take back to their gym or take back to their, their cosmetic routine and actually make decisions that's going to make it more effective for them.
It seems like we're already living in the future. I can't believe that we're like there already. But Antonius, I want to talk to you about this because I feel like you've really been a groundbreaker too when it comes to designing different ways to think about our routines. Where do you think we're going to be in 5 to 10 years?
I very much agree with Dan and James. I think what you see in the tools, and you see more and more and more tools, more niche as well. So I think what you see in the devices, things get better, and because they focus more on the specific area, rather than trying to do everything in one device. And I think the education, the consumers are becoming a lot more sophisticated. I think retailers like a Sephora have been educating them in their skincare studios. I think a lot of magazines have been educating consumer, and I think YouTube bloggers, there's so much online that has been making the average consumer, a lot more sophisticated and educated. And I think that will actually pave the way for solutions like James's that actually will take the next step. And I think with that, you'll get a more demanding consumer, but I think they will be easier to educate because they're more open-minded and they have a higher level of understanding of what we're trying to do in a device.
If I can just add one thing, that I think your comment about a more demanding consumer is really a really good point, and I think it actually leads to more innovation, because a lot of what's prompted the work that we've done has been, the questions and the detailed things that these consumers want to know about themselves. So it's not as simple as, let me just put some jeans together and give it back. They know what they want in terms of a report, what they want to address, how they want to adjust their lifestyle. So you have to be really sophisticated in what products you put out for the consumer.
And what sort of challenges do you think that we need to overcome in order to get there?
Well, I think right now, education for us is definitely the main challenge. If you look at our device, people are like, is this a shower speaker? Is it a speaker, a perfume bottle? It's like, it's a facial brush. And it doesn't look like a facial brush. So, your first 5 minutes, you're really explaining what the product is, rather than what it does, or what the benefits are, or how it works. So for us, I think that's still definitely a challenge, where consumers are in one way moving to kind of like that snapshot Snapchat kind of like society where in like 10 seconds they need to know what it is. But the devices and our applications are becoming more sophisticated because they do more, they work in a technology rather than just a jar, etc. So I think really the challenge is trying to educate and grab their attention in a short time span, that they are eager to learn more. And especially for products that don't really have a precedent or that don't look like other products in the market, I think that's the major challenge.
Right, and I want to hear from Dan on this too, because you have an at-home solution that is, we want to know what it is, but how do you break that down for the consumer to understand?
It's the problem that we face every day, and it's the same problem that anybody that's first to market faces. So you have to teach people what problem they have and that you're the best way to solve that problem. But I would rather deal with that problem than be the second one to market and say, ours is the same but cheaper, or ours is the same but faster. You know, there's a strong educational component. On the flip side of that, from a marketing perspective, it gives you a lot to talk about. You know, you have a lot of information that you can convey to potential customers and have a conversation that goes, you know, very far because you have a lot of education to do.
Well, I loved speaking to you before because I was like, you know, does it vibrate? And I feel like for me and for a lot of people, we have our regular routine, we have our go-to products, and for the most part, we think that what we're doing is fine. We don't realize that we could be increasing the efficacy of what we're already doing. So talk to us about how you made the vibration part, just so that people could understand that it's working, and yes, this is happening, something's going on.
So the first generation of the product, it's an ultrasound device. So our ultrasound doesn't create any heat. You can't feel it working, and it doesn't create any audible sound. So the first generation of the device, you would turn it on, and 30% of the people that test it thought that the device they got was broken. So we added just a little simple vibrate, function in there, so that people know that it's doing something.
Right, I think that you need to figure out the balance of where we are now and where the technology is, which is almost in the future. And I'm sure, Jim, this is something you deal with all the time when you're trying to break down very complex science to something that we can understand and find useful. How do you find that you do that?
I think you actually said exactly what I was going to say. We're about balance. So one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on is being very close to our customer and asking them for a lot of feedback. And when developing our test, it took a couple of iterations where the first version was extremely technical. So genomics, there's tons of things you can say, but the people were like, well, this is a great 50-page report, but there's too much, I can't digest it. Then you kind of go to the other extreme and you make it too simple, and they go, well, I want more. So it was finding this sweet spot where the average person can have something actionable and at the same time understand the underlying genetics and the science, which they all find really interesting. But if you go too far, it's very easy to lose them in a bunch of technical jargon that frankly isn't applicable to anything they're going to do day to day. So that was definitely one of our challenges, and being able to communicate that to people is really important for us.
Well, and it's also very scary when you tell people that you're applying technology to the face. And Dan, this is great for you. How do you make sure that what you're doing is reasonably safe and people feel safe using it?
We're a cosmetic product. It's a self-regulated industry, and it's important, obviously, to us that it's safe and that people understand that it's safe. So based on how we manufacture it, the batteries, UL listed, all the components the whole thing is UL listed. So we know from a manufacturing perspective it's safe, but more importantly, we're self-regulated. So we decided to limit the power output below the federally stated limit for vascular ultrasound. So the federal government states limits for medical devices, and even though we're not a medical device, we're under that limit just so that we're consistent with what the US federal government says is safe.
Well, and it's interesting when you think about technology. It's such a marketing tool. When you add technology or high tech or anything like that to a product, you automatically are put into that cool, new, innovative space. And sometimes that can be a crutch in a way. How long can you coast on marketing alone without the science to back it up?
I don't think you can go very far. When you see a lot of incumbent brands adding technology stories to their new lines to keep it fresh, you also see new brands that are overly technical, and I think especially in beauty, you see a lot of highly technical devices they're created in a way that no beauty consumer would ever understand them or want to use them. So, when we were developing this, we looked at Bluetooth connectivity to an app, to the phone, to sensors, and at the end of the day, we realized that the information that we could get back from those sensors and the ability for us to customize what it's doing based on that information had a nominal benefit. I'm sure we could have sold more because apps are cool and Bluetooth is cool. Probably could have charged more, but we went with a single on-off button because it's the most usable, the most effective, but not necessarily the coolest.
James, do you find that to be true for you as well when you're talking about the science behind the claims, the marketing claims?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we have to be grounded in the science. So I think that to Dan's point, there's guidelines out there of things you can, templates and models of other businesses, federal guidelines on other products that can help guide your thinking. But you have to be grounded in the science. You have to be careful not to let the science get carried away. So to your point with technical add-ons, for us it's, how many genes is enough? Which are the genes that you add that have a loose association but maybe aren't really actionable? So for us it's trying to not get carried away with the new gene that was just discovered. We want to be with the gene that has been proven out that this has a relevance to the customer. So science is going to be a critical part, but like you said, it can become a crutch and it can actually hurt you if you use it the wrong way.
It's such an upside down world I feel like we're living in, and I want to talk about innovation and the way that we start to develop products, right? Because I think a lot of times it was done from a lab somewhere over there to the consumer, and now we're so connected to the consumer and we're able to get real-time feedback and we're able to see what people really want and how they're responding. I'm curious to hear from you about sort of the new approach to development.
Yeah, I think Foreo has a pretty unique way of doing things. We're founded by engineers. Our CEO is a physicist, but our entire company typically is involved in any product development. So typically one of our founders and engineers come with a bunch of prototypes. They get distributed amongst the entire company. People try, test them out. So I think a lot of improvements for our Luna range came from a girl in our finance department. People that are typically not involved in the product development process. And from innovation as well, when we launched our ISA, the toothbrush, we actually decided to do a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo. Not necessarily because of the money, because we had it funded and we were good to go, but we had a beta sample and we decided to crowdsource more innovation. So we decided before the product, we did our standard safety testing, but then we put our beta testing samples on Indiegogo. About 2,000 to 4,000 people signed up. They got these samples and they tested it out for us for 3 months. And they sent it back. We actually made about 17 product innovations on the toothbrush just based on their feedback. So we really crowdsourced that innovation, and with that we were able to improve our product, and we had 4,000 kind of like product ambassadors in the world talking about the toothbrush that they helped innovate and help design. So for us it's very much about trying to democratize innovation as well, because so much of the innovation is done in a boardroom or in a lab that nobody from the company, let alone anybody outside the company, has access to. So I think if you have a lean operation that's able to produce and innovate in a very fast way, you're actually able to open up to the rest of the world and kind of create that group of innovators that are even outside your company. So that's what we're trying to do with Foreo and the Foreo Institute. And that's been proven to be very successful. Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting to think about the fast pace that we're moving at. Like, are we just innovating to innovate? Are we trying to come up with the next thing and it's too far ahead of our time? How do you find that sort of unique marketplace, and how do you make sure that what you're doing is where we're ready for it and it's also something that's useful?
Well, I think for a lot of people, and I think it's true for probably a lot of brands, where all of a sudden there is like a cream with a 3D laser or something in the jar or whatsoever. There's a lot of like marketing-based innovation. But I think if you look at, and I think what all three of us here at the stage are doing. It's something completely new. And for us, we're not necessarily creating new needs or something that hasn't been there before. People have been trying to clean their face since the washcloth. People have been trying to use efficient creams since there was a cream. People have been trying to get less wrinkles for like hundreds of years. And I think what we are more trying to do is make that more efficient. So what you have and that need that you have, to actually enhance it, to make it better, to make it cheaper, to make it at home. So all different products, just to make sure that what you're doing it right, you're doing it better, you do it more efficient. And in the end, it's also cheaper than going to a specialist, or it's also more accessible for people that maybe don't want to go to a beauty salon, or like men that don't want to go, you know, because there's a stigma on it still. So I think for us as Foreo, we're not trying to create needs where there are no needs. We're just trying to make it easier to fulfill the needs that are already there.
I see you're anxious. Go ahead.
I very much agree with those points, and I think for us, the innovation really came on taking a technology that's being widely used in drug development, disease understanding, you know, and applying it to a new market. So in terms of what we do in the lab, there's no difference in what we do in Aura compared to what we would do to genotype how someone metabolizes the drug. It's the same technology, but now we're going, all right, let's look at some different genes, put it together in a more consumer-friendly way, and all of a sudden you have a new product, something that people aren't used to seeing, and new information that consumers can use. So, I mean, it wasn't innovative tech, it was taking technology that's out there, repackaging it, and making it in a more consumer-friendly way.
Well, and Dan, I want to hear from you too, because I feel like you aren't telling people to buy new products, you're just helping them use them better. So, is that...
Yeah, so this is one of our products. We're going to release 5 more this year that aren't ultrasound. But when we look at product development, we do both top-down and bottom-up. So we have engineers that come to us with technologies and say, do you have any use for this? But we also look at the core beauty needs. You know, the same beauty needs that people have always had, they haven't really changed. So it's removing hair, growing hair, matching colors for foundations, cleansing, absorption, etc. And so we look at where the satisfaction levels are the lowest and say, okay, here's an interesting place to go try and find a solution. And most of the time, you know, we go down a rabbit hole and say, well, we can't figure that out yet. But eventually, you know, we do find some areas where we say, here's an underachieving market that hasn't had any technological innovation in a while, and that's where we're going to go play.
If you look at our panel, I just love that I'm up here with 3 men that are taking beauty very seriously, because I think that beauty has generally been marketed towards women and technology towards men. So do you think that technology is making the beauty industry more palatable for men, Antonius?
I mean, I think that overall there's a trend in beauty that it's more marketed and more aimed at men. I think there's also, men are more involved in the beauty regimes, I would say. But I think what I find interesting is when you merge technology into beauty, all of a sudden you have so many startups founded or like run by men. So, you know, like I have my market meetings with Sephora, and the first time I showed up, it was 14 women lined up, beautiful women, all like dressed to the T's, and we walked in with like a physicist, a scruffy bearded engineer, and myself. We walked in with 4 men, and that's something new if you compare it to a lot of different beauty brands. So I think if you have like little startups that are run by men, they automatically know how to target to men, to design something for men. So I think it's also there's more companies and more men in beauty right now than I think ever been before. So I think that has a role to play as well. I think men in general have just a bigger role in terms of decision making in these companies. So that's an interesting thing that is just changing as well, I think.
It is, and Jim, I'm curious to hear from you about this, because from a DNA perspective, that seems to not be gender biased.
Yeah, I think, you know, our tech kind of levels the playing field a little bit, since, you know, a cheek swab is a cheek swab, DNA is the DNA. I will say that we've sold to men here at our booth today. So I think we kind of definitely have the advantage where, We've had couples that'll buy it just because they're curious of how they compare to each other. So maybe the guys lean into the competitive part of it. They want to see if their skin's better than their wives. I don't know genetically, but that seems to happen quite a bit where men are still interested in the quantification of themselves. So this is kind of like, well, it's not really a woman's product or a men's product. It's understanding who you are, what's your underlying blueprint for a lot of different things. So I think it kind of appeals to both men and women that way.
Totally. Well, I also want to ask about how and when does research match with product development? And Dan, if you don't mind handling that question, I feel like your product is a perfect example of where they come together.
Yeah, so developing a high-tech product requires massive amounts of research, and sometimes it starts with the research, and we'll find third-party, whether it's publicly available or not, we'll find research and contact them and say, hey, can we build a product together? On the other extreme, we say, we wish there was a thing that did A, B, and C, and then we go out to our engineers and they do it. But then after that's all done, we have to go through a first layer of safety testing and then a layer of efficacy testing. So we're fortunate in that the bulk of our business is direct to consumer. So we have tens of thousands of customers who are more than happy to get free stuff from us in exchange for telling us how they like it. So we can do that kind of stuff, but then we use third-party independent labs, both clinical and consumer testing labs, and they'll run through significant and significantly expensive third-party independent testing. But it's critical. One of the things that's really interesting and different about these device businesses versus the topicals is that you could launch a topical skincare product for $5,000. You're in business, you're a brand. But to develop a high-tech product and go through all the R&D and regulatory and safety testing, even as a cosmetic product, it's millions of dollars.
Well, Jim, too, I feel like Aura just fell into your lap there. So how did you figure out how to turn what you were doing, which was all research-based, right, and medical, into a product that is successful?
Yeah, so I think the falling in our laps a little different, but I think there was definitely a pull for it. I think for us from the development side is actually leveraging a lot of research that's done in academic fields already. And for us, the challenge is wading through tons of data, tons of genes, tons of reports, and identifying the ones that are going to be meaningful and actionable for consumers. So there's still a back end where we can hear that customer need, we get that feedback early on, we have to go back and go, okay, here's all the research being done into skin. And it could be for a variety of different reasons. People are doing things on skin grafting and how does it correlate to how your skin regenerates, all these different areas of research. And we have to go, okay, what's the genetic component that we can put into a report that will help a person decide what lotion to use, how they're going to adjust their skincare regimen. So there's still research, not on the technical side, not the same way that Dan's experiencing it. It's more of an information, I don't want to say big data, but really collecting the right information and transforming that into something useful.
Right. Well, it's difficult to also connect the science to the beauty people. I feel like Foreo has done a really great job. How did you make that happen?
I think it's really interesting because I think I mentioned it before, but if you look at our team, our founders that used to work for Sony Ericsson in the product development, so they're like mobile phones, and our CEO is a physicist/consultant. I think the person, my hospitality, consulting, construction background. Then we have some, estheticians. We have people from beauty backgrounds, and we have the person doing the most account management comes from finance. So it's just such a weird mixture, our company, but I think that also creates an atmosphere where there is diversity, and I think diversity leads to creativity. Because people are asking questions that if you put 20 of the same people from the same beauty background or the same MBA or the same country in the same room might not ask. And if you put our CEO with our esthetician or like a couple people, the magic that then happens is just so interesting because people like, oh, I've been in beauty for 30 years and I never had that question. And that's when you create innovation, I think. That's where you just create something that other people haven't thought of because they never were exposed to that diversity or those questions. So I think what we try to do is we're not trying to hire on background. We're trying to hire on that critical thinking and that critical mass of kind of like, okay, why? Or why not? Or why not this way? Or just, it's more like hiring on a mindset rather than background. And I think that's where a lot of startups can get that competitive advantage, because that's just, you're starting to think of things that other people haven't thought of yet. So
it really pays off to have a well-rounded team that's coming from everywhere. Before we run out of time, I want to make sure to talk to each of you about what's next for your company, but also what do you think is next for beauty and tech? Dan?
So in general for beauty and tech, I think the future is connecting your business and if we combine all of our businesses where you're getting real meaningful data, it's getting transferred to our kind of devices that can then make adjustments and can do something meaningful with that data. And I think we've spoken about this, and if we could have, in an ideal world, you'd have genetic information, hormonal information, environmental information, and if you could take all of that and then process it and do something meaningful, whether it's produce a custom topical, adjust the, if you had a device that had a bunch of different modalities, it was sonic, ultrasonic, LED, laser, microcurrent, whatever, and you could adjust the modalities based on the feedback. I think that would be amazing. I think that's going to happen eventually, but I haven't seen anybody who's doing it yet.
I love that tech people want to work together and just move the industry forward. I feel like that is something that I find happens all the time. It's not so much of a competitive market. It's a how do we get to the next place? You do this, I do this. How can we combine it and offer something even more useful and even more nuanced? So it's incredible.
Yeah, no, I think Dan nailed it for me. I mean, there's one component for us around as more and more information comes out on the genome in general, we can continue to expand the amount of information that's within our test. But as Dan pointed out, I think the more valuable piece is someone can go to his company, this company, that company, anyone, and go, here's my genetic profile. What is it that I should be using? What setting do I use on my instrument? What cocktail of different products do I need to be using for myself? So for us, it's, we want to continue to expand the information that we can put together in a meaningful way, and then partner with other people that, can use that data to refine their products for each individual person.
And for you, what's up next?
I mean, I think these guys, they kind of nailed it as in terms
Stole his
of,
answer.
I think you'll see the market more and more moving towards a niche and tailor-made skincare, like custom-made, to more and more to that more educated consumer. I think more and more people know what they want. They will demand what they want. And it's up to us to come up with solutions. And more it's also 360. So people want their consultant and their advice, and they want to get the right products, and then they want to use that product better. I think you'll see a lot more of that. But I also think the United States is definitely ahead in a lot of things. In Europe, for example, there's the tools category is still growing a lot. We were in Germany in a meeting, they're like, oh, you have a motor, so your tools go next to the vacuum cleaners because it's electricity. Now it's a beauty tool, now it's electricity. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for defining us.
Exactly.
For us.
So there's still a lot of development going on there. But on top of that, I think to add a different perspective, I don't know how it is for you guys, but for us, if you go and you're meeting with buyers, a lot of them are still in that more old-fashioned mindset of you have to be in store and brick and mortar and sample. It's impossible to sample a $200 device or like a test. So for us, what we see is the store is more almost like a showroom. People go there to try and touch, but they buy like 50% of our sales, even at retailers, are online. So I think you'll see more and more video, online buying, more men, so they all purchase their beauty products online. So I think also in the next 10 to 15 years, you'll see, especially for tools, just the e-commerce going up and up. So.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing the stage with me. I'm sure that people are going to want to talk to you, see your products, figure out more about what it is that you do. So please, everybody here is exhibiting. Come see us. We'll be on the side of the stage for a little bit. Come ask us anything, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.